So I'm pleased to be joined by Ryan Hemsley, who lives on Vancouver Island. He's a young man who feels disillusioned with sort of what's going on in Canada. He's one of the people that has been severely impacted by the Trudeau economy. He's sick of it, and so he decided to voice some of that. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining the show.
Hi, Candice.
Okay, so let me get the timeline straight here. So when President Trump started talking about the 51st state, you sort of became one of the people who were vocal about it on social media, on X, saying, hey, not a bad idea. Rupa Subramanya, who's a journalist who writes for the Free Press, reached out to you, and you were featured in her news story, Trump, Take My Country, Please. So she spoke to several young people and different types of Canadians that actually think, hey, this isn't a terrible idea. After that, you were invited on by the CBC to presumably share your perspective so that CBC could share with their viewers a different perspective. Except for that's not really what happened. The piece came out on the CBC, USA, it said, who are the Canadians who would support a 51st state? And then you were part of a video show as well. So we're going to walk the viewer through the show and we can point out some of the problems with it. We'll do that in a minute. But first, Ryan, is there anything that I missed? Is that sort of basically how it went down?
Yeah, that's how it went down. It started off very kind of encouraging, get the voices out there, have a discourse. But, like things go with CBC, it didn't exactly come out perfectly or the way that I had thought, but that's okay. But that's how she went, yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, like we've done polling on this through True North, and basically, it seems to me that the young males almost overwhelmingly kind of are open to this idea, interested in this idea, which to me says that this country is just not working for them. Like, there's not the opportunity; it doesn't exist there. It's not so much a question of like, do you love Canada and are you patriotic enough? But it's more a question of like, what is your life going to look like? Like, do you have an opportunity to have the kind of future that you want? And obviously, we did this poll through True North and we teamed up with One Persuasion, and it found that 45% of men aged 18 to 34 would take American citizenship if the opportunity was given to them. And so you fall into that age category. So, it's an interesting opportunity. Let's hear from the 46%, nearly half of the population at that age. I mean, 45% said yes, they would take it. 46 said no, and then 10 remained uncertain. So we're talking about almost a majority. And now at a national level, it was only 1 in 5 Canadians, but still 22%. That's significant. That's more than vote for the NDP party. And so, to just completely brush it aside and say it's fringe isn't really getting to the issue. And the purpose of the CBC is to tell Canadian stories, talk to Canadians, understand Canadian perspectives. And so it's really telling the way that they treated you. So let's let the viewer see. We'll start to roll this clip. This is how the CBC portrayed the people who may be interested in joining the United States.
So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state. I think they have to become the 51st state.
We look forward to the United States beating our soon-to-be 51st state, Canada.
I say Canada should be our 51st state.
The threats pile on, and Canadians are angry.
We're nice people. We like to get along. But don't push us around.
No, proudly Canadian, I'd like to stay that way.
That will never happen.
But a few don't share that rage.
To be honest, I wouldn't mind having the American dollar since our loonie is tanking, but let me know in the comments and give me a follow.
There is a movement.
Let me just pause it right there. So right off the bat, they say that Canadians are angry. Canadians are full of rage at this offer. First of all, the clips that they showed of Trump and his press secretary, you can kind of tell it's tongue in cheek, especially Carolyn Levitt there. She was obviously sort of joking when she said the 51st state. I don't think that it was coming across as a serious option. And then they go to these Canadian protesters, right? It's a pretty small protest. And we're supposed to believe that Canadians are full of rage, even though everyone also in their own video is smiling and laughing. And they interviewed 3 people and all 3 people agreed. Like, big surprise. You know what? I saw a Rebel Media clip where the guy was doing streeters, which is what we call those man on the street interviews in Calgary. And it was the exact opposite. Every single person in downtown Calgary that he was talking to was saying, hey, that sounds like a great idea. I'm interested. The American economy seems to be doing a lot better. You can buy a cheaper house in the US. Like there seems to be a better political situation down there. So like, yeah, you can go out on the street and find people that will agree with you. So already right off the bat, the CBC is sort of failing to paint a balanced picture. Any comment on that, Ryan?
Yeah, they went after the usual suspects, in my opinion. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I've been getting, outside of the initial hate blast, I've been finding quite a few people who are actually on my side, on this side with respect to this, way more than I thought. So that's why when they're quoting, for instance, in this piece, they go back to a poll done all the way back in January, with respect to only 10% of Canadians. They make it sound so fringe. But like you were saying, it's closer to 25% of Canadians, which is huge. That's 8 million plus Canadians. There's only 5.5 million people in BC. So, I mean, that's a massive, massive number of people. Yeah, I thought it was, after seeing the video, it was typical of CBC, but there's a lot more people than I think they realize who are in favor of this.
Okay, let's
Or this
go back.
idea.
Yeah, let's go back to the clip and see how the rest of the segment turns out.
Join us.
A pro-Trump reporter asked about them. Fox News is talking about it.
Well, Trump's idea of making Canada great again by turning it into the 51st state is gaining some serious traction, especially from Canadian citizens.
That's a big stretch. Polls show the overwhelming majority of Canadians in all parts of the country do not want to be part of the United States. Angus Reid Institute says 90% of us would not support joining the U.S. But who are the other 10%? And why do they want to be part of the states?
Okay, before they go here, because they're going to go to Ryan in a second, but you can just see the sort of smug reporter saying the overwhelming majority of us don't like this idea, and Fox News over there is making it seem like it's a big movement. It's like, well, actually, Fox actually described the situation a little bit more accurately than the CBC, because it's not a small fringe. To your point, I mean, the poll that we did with One Persuasion and True North found that in British Columbia, it was 28% that said, yes, I'm interested. 20, that's almost huge. 1 in 3, right? So we are talking about a significant amount of the public. And so the CBC can just like dismiss it and pretend that it's fringe and that it's not important. Again, just shows CBC fails us as Canadians because they're not digging deeper. The point of this segment is clearly to just create a straw man, to say Canadians agree, we love our country, Trump is awful, we don't like him, and then they bring you in to try to, I think, to try to show, look, we are being fair and balanced, and then they bring you in as a subject. So let's go back, Ryan, and we can see the part where they interview you and how that plays in. Let's go back to that clip.
Online search leads me to Ryan Hemsley.
How did you feel when you heard Donald Trump say Canada should be the 51st state?
I was very excited. I've been dreaming about it since I was a kid. I don't actually believe that it's going to be a 51st state, but I do think it's an idea for a broader union between us.
Hemsley is 33 and just moved to Victoria from Calgary. He sells cars for a living and thinks he would be better off financially if Canada joined the U.S.
I know that just based on my work ethic, how hard I work, if I were to pay less taxes and have more access to trade and business opportunities, I know that I would be able to make more money.
Hemsley likes Trump, and he likes the way unelected billionaire Elon Musk is gutting government services.
Would you want that chaos to come here to Canada?
Well, it has to, because we have to fix it somehow. I'd much rather the chaos come here to quickly and efficiently deal with some of the issues Canada's facing.
Angus Reid Institute.
Okay, wait a second. I just have to get Ryan to comment on that. Ryan, is that accurate? Do you like the way that unelected billionaire Elon Musk is gutting services, as she puts it?
Well, when I was asked that question, and I will say that outside of the fact that they edited it in a certain way to make me look like a total dum-dum, she was very polite to me when we were there. But, when she asked that question about unelected Elon Musk, this is before the Carney coronation, I, brought up, I don't have a problem with the leader of a free country choosing their staff, just like Trudeau has Carney as an unelected advisor, right? Didn't include any of these points. So, I mean, I don't think anybody should be judging Donald Trump for how he's put together his team, to be honest with you. It's one of the greatest teams, bipartisan team that we've seen. But no, that was a classic example of what the CBC does. Completely takes my answer out of context, leaves out the important part that would maybe help shine some light on the similarities between Musk and Carney, funny enough, but at least in their roles in government. But
Well,
yeah, I thought that was funny.
But even that, right? So whilst Donald Trump was campaigning, he had Elon Musk with him, right? The idea of Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, was out in the public during the campaign. Elon was there. So when you were voting for Trump, you knew what you were going to get. You knew that he was bringing in this genius billionaire guy that has built all these companies, and that his one of the things he was going to do was go through line by line and examine government, cut the size of government so that the US government doesn't go bankrupt. And the CBC spins that concept as an unelected billionaire cutting services for America. What service did he cut, right? Name one service that he cut, because he hasn't cut any services other than USA. That's the only thing. It's like, yeah, we stopped sending $8 million to like trans operas in Peru or whatever. Like, that's the only thing they've actually cut. And Americans knew that they were going to get Elon Musk because Trump had him out there. Whereas in Canada, we didn't. It's not like Justin Trudeau was out there campaigning in 2021 with the World Economic Forum and saying like, we're going to bring in the World Economic Forum to run the government. We're going to bankrupt Canadians. Like that was not how he campaigned at all. So Trump has been completely transparent and consistent. Whereas to the point I think that you tried to make the CBC, this kind of stuff does happen a lot. And no, Justin Trudeau never campaigned with Mark Carney. And Mark Carney just became prime minister with 150,000 votes. So, talk about unelected. Okay. Is it worth going back to the CBC clip? Should we play a bit more? Let's see where the segment takes us.
The U.S. was highest in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Yeah, there's a consistent group of the most alienated folks in the country that tend to center around these separatist movements and have for a number of generations now.
Take those poll numbers with a grain of salt, says political science professor Jared Wesley.
Most folks that have expressed this in polls to us have not really thought through the implications of it, and when tested on it, usually back away from those types of opinions.
There is overlap between people who...
I think that's enough. So they found a smart political science professor to say that the people who would support this are alienated and they're on the fringe and they probably haven't really thought it through. And
we don't know what we want, and we'll just change our mind the second we're presented with liberal logic. Like, classic.
Okay, I just want to bring in one other tidbit from the poll that we did with One Persuasion, because in our poll, education level emerged as a strong influencing factor for the willingness to accept American citizenship. So only 13% of respondents with high school education or less said yes, that they would take U.S. citizenship. It grew to 19% for those who had attended community college or trade school. It grew to 25%, so 1 in 4 for someone with a bachelor's degree. And then someone with further education, some kind of a professional degree or postgraduate degree, it went up to 35%. So completely the opposite of what this political science professor was saying. The more educated you are, it turns out, the more interested you are in this. So I think we're done with the CBC. We know what they were trying to do and what they were trying to pull. So let's have a real conversation, Ryan, about why you take this offer seriously, why you think it might be a good thing. Now, do you think it's a good thing for you personally, or do you think Canada as a whole should join the United States?
Both. Well, firstly, I will say, though, I really don't believe that Canada will be a 51st state. I like the idea of it, but I'm looking at this as a total win-win situation, no matter how you slice it. One scenario, it's extremely unlikely we become the 51st state, and I win. Perfect. And I believe other Canadians will win too. The other scenario, far more likely, is that Trump is going to negotiate us to a place where we're actually now taking our own sovereignty seriously. We're now holding our leaders' feet to the fire. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having all these drug busts. We have a fentanyl czar now. Thank you, Donald Trump, for helping us take drugs seriously. So that's how I look at it. This is a net benefit for all Canadians, no matter how you slice it. So I'm looking at this, no matter how it goes down, this is a win-win. I either get to be part of the greatest country on planet Earth, which I'm saying this as a Canadian, but it is the United States of America. That's just my 2 cents. Or part of an experiment that'll revive what Canada used to be like, because Donald Trump is going to hold our feet to the fire. So I look at this as a net positive, no matter how we slice it.
Well, it's so interesting because they don't want to have this conversation. They don't want to have this debate. They just want the knee-jerk reaction. They want those Canadians that they found at the beginning of the clip, just like the ones that'll go out and protest with signs like "We love Canada" or Doug Ford in Ontario with the "Canada is not for sale" hat, like that, just sort of like base level patriotism from a group of people, by the way, who have spent the last 10 years trying to build a post-national state and saying that Canada is this horrible, racist, genocidal country. We should erase Sir John A. Macdonald's names from all the history books. And basically, we should all walk around in shame for what our ancestors did in building this country. And then just like snap of the finger, everyone put on your Canada Maple Leaf hat. Like let's cheer
I
on
know
ourselves.
it's so fake. Like I don't even think they believe it from their own like peers. I mean, it's just so fake. Like you said, these were the same people who would just completely take a dump on the flag, for instance. They would, everything about Canada was something to be ashamed of, something to be sorry about. And all of a sudden, like you said, snap your fingers, Orange Man bad, it's Team Canada again. That's like, that doesn't even make sense anymore. So I think more and more people are seeing through like the failed liberal logic that we've been dealing with for the last decade or almost a decade. And it's, there's more and more people waking up to the reality, in my opinion. But there's still like the usual suspects. They're going with whatever the liberal leader says is kind of the direction to go. Hate Canada today, love Canada tomorrow, and everything in between whenever they feel like it. So, there's no concrete kind of action coming from them. I don't believe that their sincerity. I don't even think they genuinely believe it. It's those Canada's not for sale hats, or Mike Myers going on SNL. Canada's not for sale. That means nothing, Mike. No one's paying attention. It's weird. It's laughable. And I don't think Donald Trump's trying to buy Canada, but if our liberal leadership is that stupid that we end up handing over a massive swath of Canadian resources to him, that's a possibility too. But that's a reflection of our own leadership at that point.
Well, and just to go back to the 51st state or like buying Canada, like I don't think that was ever like a literal proposition, right? I think that Trump talks like this because he wants to create a better deal. And I think Canada should have a better deal. I think that we should have more economic liberalism between the two countries. We should be able to trade. I would even be open to having some kind of like a European Union style, not government, but the ability for Canadians to go work in the United States, Americans to come work in Canada, like having greater flow between the border. I think that could be hugely beneficial, but then having tighter restrictions to get into North America. So if the United States can force Canada to take immigration seriously and to crack down on our own issues with transnational gangs, I mean, we've had Sam Cooper on the program multiple times talking about the foreign gangs running our fentanyl labs and drug dealers, terrorists coming in from all kinds of terrorist groups operating in Canada, taking advantage of our weak laws. Like if we could use this as an opportunity to really, really fix that and then have more liberal, I think that most Canadians would be open to that, especially if it could help the economy. Because one thing we do know is that after 10 years of Justin Trudeau, our economy is like the difference between the Canadian economy and the American economy is so stark. Like it used to be roughly equal, right? Or Americans were slightly wealthier, Canadian dollar was a little bit lower. Whereas now it's like a huge gap in terms of GDP per capita, the cost of living, wages are down in Canada. Like Canada's being left behind under this strategy. And yet our media is like twisting it and trying to make Canadians believe that we have to like double down on failed liberal policies to avoid this scary.
And that's the thing is they're getting in their own way. They hate the man so much that it's just clouding any sensible judgment at this point. They don't even know what they're talking about. Like we're just asking, I'm only going to speak for myself, but younger guy, contributor in the workforce, paying my taxes. Like if you were to lose that demographic in this country, you're done anyway. So like it'll just be a complete welfare state with people not contributing and or the older generations. So, I mean, you don't want to lose it. This demographic in particular, men and women, you do not want to lose this working class demographic, but they're alienating us. It's not, they're like, oh, they feel alienated. That's why they want this idea of the 51st state. Well, maybe because you've spent 10 years trying to alienate people who even think like this. And you kind of said it earlier, but you only get one life to live here. And if the leader of this country is not going to take care of it, well, then maybe we need another leader who can help take care of this land. Canada will always be my home. I will always go to Ottawa to visit. It doesn't change regardless of economic union or whatever the heck is about to happen. That's never going to change. This will always be home. It'll be where we're comfortable, but we need a new custodian now, and we need someone else who's willing to take us seriously. What's mind-boggling to me is, and I said this on Czech News when I was there, but Donald Trump has done more for Canada in the last couple of weeks than our own leaders. And that's just a reality too. And there's nothing they can say about that. Our leaders pro government, they're doing nothing. Carney's, elected by nobody at the end of the day. 150,000 Canadians represents nothing. And they're still doubling down. I mean, Doug Ford, we're going to charge 25% tariffs on electricity, buckled within an hour. And it's embarrassing to think that we can go toe to toe with the United States. It's just not reality. So it's so sad. They're really hurting us for the sake of scoring political points with like a class of people that's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking in Canada. So appealing to the minority really in this case. And it's sad. I mean, but it's costing people like me. It's costing people like you. I mean, anyone who's watching this, look at your pay stub and tell me that things are okay. Go to a grocery store, tell me things are okay. $6 chickens were reality last year, and it's $20 a chicken. Like, I mean, stupid things. It doesn't even make sense. Orange juice is a luxury now. It's like $10 for a jug. Like, it's insane. But this is what they've done.
Well, they've destroyed the country, and now they're trying to blame someone else. And, if you want to really see a fringe, a small, tiny fringe, how about the 150,000 people? That represents 0.004% of the Canadians. So we have a prime minister that has been selected by 0.004%. And yet they're trying to say that young men who are interested in what Donald Trump has to say, that's a small fringe, even though it's 45% of the population. Final question for you here, Ryan. You posted on X that you've been getting some deranged fan mail, including by, it seems like even some high profile people here. This is a prominent lawyer who wrote you a pretty nasty message there, a pretty deranged message on X. So tell us, sorry, I guess that was an email into your inbox, just ranting and raving about how dare you, basically. So tell us a little bit more about the reaction that you got after going on the CBC.
The reaction I got was pretty emblematic of the people who actually view CBC. They are in such an echo chamber. It's pretty disgusting. The reaction from CBC was completely one-sided, 95% completely negative, and not just negative, but viciously negative. That lawyer comparing me to a Nazi, also threatening my livelihood, saying that he would reach out to places in an attempt so that I cannot find work here on the island. When the island's a small place, word gets around pretty quick, as I'm finding out now. And just all of these threats because a Canadian citizen decided to express an opinion that's a little bit different from his in his ivory tower in Vancouver or wherever he lives now, Vancouver or Victoria. And, and that was actually probably one of the more tame ones, despite how crazy it was. Other people on Reddit, for instance, and I've got this great, I mean, this is all over my X account, but, it sounds crazy even saying, but threatening to tie me up by the neck, tie me up by the feet and drag me around the streets like Mussolini. That is like right off of Reddit. And I'm just like, doesn't even make sense. This is deranged that they would even make so yeah, it's the CBC. The response I got from the CBC article was shockingly negative. Whereas every other time I speak about this on more balanced, with more balanced news sources, it's been extremely balanced. There's been a lot of positivity, but the CBC in particular, it's obvious who watches it because they are insane. Their response was just right out of left field. I couldn't even believe it the first day, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I believe it because I think the people who watch the CBC believe every word they're told, right? They sit there and, to your point, they live in an echo chamber where, the CBC, they are basically working on behalf of the Liberal Party to scare Canadians, to put fear into Canadians, to divide us, which makes us weaker. And that is what their goal is. That is what they try to do. And the only saving grace, Ryan, is that Canadians have tuned out. Like, I think that their audience is small and shrinking, and more and more Canadians, especially young Canadians, don't have any time for that. Like, they know that it's biased. They know that they're not being told the truth. I feel sorry for the people who sit and listen to it. It's like a captive audience and they believe it because it's a disservice that's being done to those people because CBC is deliberately pushing propaganda on them to fearmonger for all the reasons that we laid out. So it is a bit sad, but I hope you get a more positive reception after coming on this show. And we appreciate you coming on and expressing your view and even standing up in the first place, because it's not an easy position to take. And you do put yourself up for criticism, but we know from polls that a significant number of Canadians feel the way that you do, Ryan. So we appreciate you standing up for your beliefs and speaking. That's we need free speech in our country and our society in order to maintain it. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Candice.
All right, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Candice Malcolm. This is Candice Malcolm Show. Thank you and God bless.